huge well done to everybody here, but all the people behind the scenes as well. So we could put our hands together for everybody that took involvement in this. And those are because although we're on a very specific topic, there's so much to unpack there. So I'm kind of going to jump in, and you've been pre-warned, we're going to jump in at the deep end with Katie. And I suppose the first thing, and it might seem like a really obvious question, but I really want to start there in hope that everyone can expand on some of the things they spoke about within the documentary, of what your biggest challenges are in organising your cleanups. Are they on a local level? Is mainstream support? Is it time availability for your volunteers? Or is it finance? All of the above and then some?
Yeah, I would say all of the above. Definitely. Most, as you can see from the documentary, beach cleaning that happens around Scotland is done by volunteers. So it's about finding time that people can do, and it's about then funding to support that, because you can't expect a volunteer to then also volunteer their time and money to support it. So yeah, it's definitely a mix of all of those.
Yeah, because when I'm looking at it, I think, would more permanent jobs aid the whole process? Will having more people working in permanent positions, being able to reach out to local communities, different organizations, looking at expanding the volunteer groups, or having all the admin, not just the people on the beaches, would the permanent jobs help? And how can that be created?
Yeah, I think paid roles in more sort of localized areas around the coast would definitely help to then have more of an engagement with the local communities to do it. But I think also just it needs to be funded and recognised on a bigger scale, so at government level, really, that this is the scale of the issue that we've got, so that then that can come through local councils working with different areas. Because as you can see, there's the same issues all the way around, but the types of marine litter that you've got in each area is so different. So the approach has to be appropriate to the area that you're supporting.
So my next question goes to Jacqui, and it's just picking up on that. And in the documentary, there's a lot of reference for data. And again, I kind of hit on with a pretty obvious question, but for me, can you explain to us what the data is and how is that going to support you when looking at funding?
Look, the data helps drive the change. So we saw, with the plastic bags, the introduction of the charge, but still the reduction in that. So we saw with plastic cotton buds banned in 2019, we're sadly still seeing loads and loads of them washing up on the beaches, but hopefully gradually that's going to reduce. But it's hard to drive change without data. Basically, it's hard to say, look, it's horrific, we need to do something about it, and because you can't do it justice, really. I mean, you can start to with documentaries like this. That's the images can be quite graphic. I don't know how some of you feel when you're actually standing on the beach. It's worse than it looks.
Yes. Yeah.
On the film, I mean, documentaries like this, really, really help, and they improve people's understanding for sure. But standing on the beach really doesn't, it's really hard to do that justice. And the data starts to show in numbers what we're dealing with. So we had, Standard Marine Conservation Society data is taken from 100 meters. So they've given us a concession. They said for Arica, for example, you can do 10. We tried 10 in an hour with 40 volunteers, and we couldn't touch the size of what was there. So the data it's starting to show you. If we'd extrapolated up what we did remove from that, you'd end up with 55,000 items from 100 meters. The national average is 186. So it starts to help. It starts to help us demonstrate where our hotspots are, what and the scale of the problem. But it's not. The data is great and it's super important. But again, it's we need people to really understand the scale of what we're dealing with, and that's hard.
Katie, I'd like to go back to you for this one. So we're talking about some of the images that we saw, and hearing you all, it was an instant, all along from it is worse that when we are there. You referenced a lot about the fishing industry, and I'm curious to know what accountability was there for the fishing industry, because the evidence is there. And does there need to be accountability on the fishing industry where they are providing support to local charities and local organizations where they are based in order to help support them continue their work, to provide not just financial support and people in the jobs to help with that, but also longevity for this work to be carried out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have had support from the fishing industry as well. I don't want to just completely salute them. But yeah, we've definitely, in some of the areas that we've been to, we've reached out and spoken to the local communities, and we've had them come and help remove all the rubbish that we've collected, because some of the places that we're going to are so remote and difficult to get to. We're having to go on boats to access the beach, so everything has to be removed the same way. But yeah, I think it needs to be tackled from a government level. So, and it needs to be looking at the whole, the big picture of it. So the whole of the Scottish coast, and then everything that's coming in, and then what's, like you were saying with the data, helping to support what it is that is coming in, and then how that can be. The fishing industry is not going to go away, and it's not going to stop producing marine waste, unfortunately, but there's certainly things that could be implemented and changed that would help support it. So the types of materials that are used, and other things like tagging of creels and things like that that can help support when things are washed up, that we can locate where it's come from and then get some support for removal with it, maybe. Or
so it's not like a broad generalization, it's really compartmentalizing and going, these are individual things that can happen.
There's definitely improvements that can be made. Yeah, like I said, it's not an industry that's going to disappear, and arguably shouldn't, but there's definitely things that can be made to help support everything that's coming onto that's being washed up.
So,
because currently there's nothing that if something gets washed up, there's no way of sort of saying this comes from this place, and there's no liability for them to have to come and pick it up.
So, Tommy, I'm going to come to you at the end there, to mind passing the microphone down. When we are looking at what can be proven accountability, so you're a managing director, what advice would you give to organizations to improve or to have a continued focus on their accountability for environmental practices?
I had no idea what you'd ask me, so that I was hoping to just talk about my birds and being caught in the plastic. And so it's a good question. I think running a business it's not easy, and there's so many things to think about all the time. Like for us, unfortunately, most of our compost is wrapped in plastic when it goes out in bulk bags or in small 40-litre bags. And it's tricky to try. It's hard enough to get it wrapped in plastic, the product in plastic, and get it out to the customer without worrying too much about then how do you take it back. And we're trying to take it back, but then there's legal uses about reuse of it, and it's also complicated. So it's a very big question you've asked me, and I haven't really got the answer other than to say it's definitely not easy. I think, yes, there's the legal aspect, but the best way is for people to vote with their feet and just start saying, actually, you know what, we don't want that turnip wrapped in plastic. So unless you're going to give us a turnip that's not in plastic, we're not going to buy your turnip. And to me, that's the best way to drive change, because sadly, money speaks.
Yeah. So looking at the bigger picture, but at home, and those choices you can make on an individual level, so that collectively they make that larger scale, kind of what's echoed there in the documentary.
Completely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's great. Things like the banning plastic cotton sticks, is fantastic. But, and there's certain things that can be done, through legislation, but there's other things that maybe we can bring about quicker by just saying we don't want to buy that anymore.
Okay. So I'm gonna chop to the other side of things. Kat, I'm coming to you. I really enjoyed how you spoke about and so online you like to refer to it as beach trash.
Yeah.
And how you say they're like Lego pieces and that they almost have a partner in each piece and then you can put them together. What reaction do you normally get from people who are seeing your artwork to your beach trash?
It varies. I like to try and include a bit of humour with what I'm doing. My sculptural pieces are usually fairly obvious what they are and what they're made from. You saw some pieces on the documentary, and I like to put in really bad puns. I don't know if you saw the piece that said "Not Brexit." The more fun is when I do the cyanotype pieces, because it's less obvious what the trash is, and depending on what I'm making, I make like an underwater scene, and nets make really nice weeds, and bottles float through it. You think, oh, it's a nice fishy underwater scene, but actually it's made out of the most horrible rubbish, and it's fun to just play with people's perceptions of it. You think, oh, this is quite a nice thing. Everyone likes blue and white. It's pretty, except it's not. And usually when my work is on display, there's some. If you look closer at it and you want to know more about it, there'll be an explanation somewhere of what's going on.
Within the documentary, we got a glimpse of your separation of the polystyrene. Can you kind of talk about how you came to bringing that to the table and how you kind of brought that about?
So what you saw in the documentary is really like a prototype of what I would call a trommel. It's not my own creation. There are other people all throughout the world who have created versions of this. Mm-hmm. But really what it does is uses the property of the polystyrene, which is that it floats, to separate out from things like sand and rocks and mud. Because we're trying, as you saw earlier as well, trying really hard not to remove too much natural material. So you don't want to take all the organic materials away. And part of the problem with separation is things like seaweed does float as well. So it's not a perfect system. There are ways to overcome that, but they're very, very expensive. Right. So you could create a sort of vacuum tank, which would waterlog all of the organic material, and it would fall to the bottom. And then you would have complete separation by flotation of the plastics. But that is well without my budget. Like, I'm just a volunteer. I'm just a person who wants to get the plastic off the beach. So what we did is we had to look around for a little sieve. And some of the plastic boxes, I think, were collected by my parents. I should probably shout out to my parents. I'm sorry, they're up here. They're off getting a quad bike, which is going to be used for doing more and more beach clean. I don't do all of this alone. It sort of looks like from the film that it's all kind of individual, but all of those bits and pieces were components that were gifted to me or were shared. And the whole process of trying to create this kind of flotation thing with a sort of experimental thing, we went through several iterations to get as far as it is now. And what we hope to do is scale it up. So I've got some ideas. I've got some components that we're hoping to use, which will be a little sort of filter that will kind of turn it up and keep that plastic on the top and send it off of that one plastic sort of bucket with a much larger trough, maybe a fish box, and it'll separate it out into a separate box which can then drain.
Not far into this conversation, there's a real common denominator on that it starts up at the top, and equally finance is part of that problem as well, and having it being an actual piece, what we spoke about this before, on having an actual realistic sense of making these improvements, there needs to be financial support on that. But again, it's all dictated from up top. I'm going to kind of go away from the coastal lands, and we're going to go to you, Adrian.
I think humans and all animals have always been discarding. But what's happened is that we used to discard things. So that's a failed pot from the old kilns in Portobello. That was thrown into the burn. Now that would now be a piece of plastic. When I was 15, in 1970, the plastic production was about 10 million metric tons a year. And in 2021, it was 400 million, 11 million metric tons of which is estimated to have gone into the water systems. So I think the important thing is to see how producers have manipulated the position. They haven't really come up. Here we all are, volunteers, getting rid of the stuff, and I'm no fool about that, and I'm sure all of us are here. We know a lot of it ends up still in the ground, still needing processing, still needing burning in the air, the most polluting form of air pollution. So it's a big problem, and one of the basic problems is a lot of people's pensions are tied up in these sort of things, is that petrochemical companies are making more money out of producing plastic than they do out of putting fuel in our vehicles.
What kind of difficulties are you finding in urban areas as opposed to being on the beach? Because we're kind of like two camps in terms of where we're working. So how is that in urban areas specifically?
Well, the Marine Conservation Trust says that 80% of the stuff on our beaches, ending up on our beaches, comes out of the rivers and burns. I think it's a bit difficult, this statistical stuff, because I also have read that, as you've seen, all this fishing stuff coming is 2/3 of the plastic in the oceans. Sounds a bit unlikely to me, but I've read that as a fact. What's coming out? I think a lot leads naturally to the burn. It comes out of cars, gets blown, wind, the enemy of all litter pickers, and we've all been there.
So is that coming scaling to kind of like roadside littering?
Roadside littering.
Service stations. Kind of
ends up in the burn.
Everything you see on the train tracks, along the train tracks, is like that.
Ends up on the seashore.
Yeah. And then follows the flow and dumpers up there. What would be the safety precautions? Because surely there must be some that you're not just shoving your hand in litter and then just taking. What would you recommend anybody stick out?
Good gloves.
Good gloves. Anything else?
Well, one thing I did say, I saw in use your legs, not your back.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do is if I'm organising an organised clean, is that you can go to either the Marine Conservation Society or Surfers Against Food, and they'll give you a risk assessment, and that kind of goes through some of the risks. So whether or not it is safe to take a sharps box, have the number in your phone of the council, whichever council you're part of probably has. So I do a little bit of litter picking around urban areas as well. There is a chance of getting drug litter.
If you're leading one of these things, what do you do to kind of keep everybody going?
No, I would say that the four of us, also to keep morale up, I keep telling people, four of us cleaned 4 tons in 24 hours. If we had 24 people, we could have done it in 4 hours. Yeah. If we had 100 people, we could have done it in 1 hour. So it sounds huge and ridiculous, and I think there are only 2 of us left who would ever do it again. I would definitely sign up to do it again. It was actually great fun, because you're with a group of people that are as dedicated as you are, and it means that you know that you're surrounded by a community who believe that it's possible. They don't look at it and think, oh, that's so awful, if only someone would do something.
Yeah,
they go, oh, that's so awful, what can I do about it? And even if we didn't clean the beach, that beach we left, and it was still, at the end of it, sort of 6 tons later, one of the worst beaches I'd ever seen in my life. It wasn't like you can do it all in one go, and I think accepting a little bit that what you do, every single piece matters, that every time you pick something up, you just tell yourself, I'm saving a life. So the urban cleans that I do, a lot of it is bottles and a lot of it is rodents or insects that end up inside of it. So if you say, I picked up this bottle, I probably saved a mouse's life. It's not massive. But then if everyone did that, everyone on the dog, that's it. I think keeping morale up and understanding that the green spaces and blue spaces we go to are supposed to be improving our mental health and not it's not supposed to be a deleterious experience. It's supposed to be something that we go and we do for our health and happiness. But keeping that balance and recognising that there's a point at which you maybe have to step away and go and do something else.
One, kind of, how did you get into it? But 2, the bigger question is, are you seeing progress, or does it sometimes feel like we're just keeping it at bay?
So I'm chronically optimistic about most things, and I'm pretty sure we can sort it out. I think it's great with FIDRA doing what they're doing, and lots of people trying to change legislation to stop things going in. And it's like we've talked about the polystyrene packaging. As soon as it was outlawed, you start seeing so much less of it. So I do think that we can get there. The microplastics is a totally different challenge, the tiny stuff that's there. But I think the bigger stuff, a lot of it's sold. Like the places we go, the average age is probably 30, 40 years. I mean, ancient, the bit in Skye, it's a metre deep. It's a catch point, it's coming up. And we went down through it. I found a washing up bottle, and the price was it was 12.5p or 7d or something like that. But it was from 1971, 73, when the money changed to modern money from old money, and it looked brand new because it was just buried. So we're dealing with such a historical issue. So personally, I think give it another 2 years, we'll feel that we're winning. It's still a lot to do, but we can do it. Can't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Kerry, can't we, Kerry? Kerry's got away. Kerry was in every single clip there, and she's got away and got involved. So, we can do it because we've got Kerry on our side. And she's an absolute environmental stormtrooper.